Well, hey there, guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making butter. Now, if there's one thing that I do not like, it's margarine. That stuff is horribly vile. But what I do like is I do like butter. And I thought that it would be fun to make some here today on the show. Now, I see that Kilner makes a butter churner, a small one that you can make small batches of butter for yourself at home. It's pretty reasonably priced, and I thought I'm going to purchase one of these and bring it here to the show today. And that's what we're going to do. So let's just see how this turns out. Let's head over to the bench and I'll show you what you get when you order one of these butter churners. So when you purchase one of these, this is what you're looking at. It comes with a small recipe booklet and instructions. And this, it's a glass container with a lid that snaps down on top with these two metal clips. And the metal clips hold it securely to this jar. It has the handle with the integrated gears here that turn this paddle, which is, I'm not sure what it's made out of, really. It's some form of plastic on the metal shaft. This rubber seal here seals the whole thing together. And this is what you use to churn the butter. So how do you use this thing? What do you do? How do you make the butter? Well, I'm not going to do it out here in the shop. So honest to goodness, let's head inside. We're going to hit the kitchen and I'm going to show you what to do with this. And we're going to have a bit of fun and make ourselves some butter. Well, truth be told, there is only two ingredients that you need here. One will be whipping cream and the other will be salt to taste. Now, guys, don't be a Neanderthal like I am here and open the carton on the wrong side. You will find that it will cause you an awful lot of grief when you try to pour it. So pay attention to what side you open the carton from. I guess it's no trouble to know who it is that normally opens a carton in our house. And, well, you can see here it is not me. However, my wife did come to my rescue, and after she was done laughing at me, she was able to provide me with a container that I could put the leftover whipping cream in. Now, guys, what you're going to need here is 300 milliliters of heavy cream or whipping cream, and you're going to want to let this sit out of the fridge on the counter at room temperature for a minimum of 2 hours. Once your cream is at its room temperature, you need to remove the lid of your butter churner just by pulling out the metal tabs, and it will just lift away from the jar. Then take your 300 milliliters of cream and add it to the jar of the Kilner Butter Churner. Now, guys, don't go adding extra cream hoping you can make extra butter. This machine is designed to make a specific amount of butter, and it needs the extra room in there to be able to work the paddle and work the cream. So don't go doubling up. Keep it at your 300 milliliters, and that will yield about a half a cup of butter. So I'm just starting a stopwatch here, and all you want to do is turn this handle. This is not rocket science. This is not anything difficult. In fact, you know what? Get your kids involved and get them to help out turning this, because this could be a fun experience for them too, especially the young ones, because it's quite amazing how it works. Now I'll just provide you with the information as to what the manual says. It states that after 5 to 6 minutes, the cream will thicken. After 8 to 10 minutes, the cream will be very thick, but you want to keep turning because you're almost there. And after 10 to 12 minutes, you'll find that the handle is hard to turn, and then suddenly it loosens and becomes easier, and basically you have butter. Well, let me tell you, this was not my experience. I think that my cream was a little colder than what it should have been. I don't believe I left it out at room temperature as long as what I should have. And of course, the warmer the cream is, the faster it's going to separate. And mine was still quite cold. So truth be told, mine took about double the time that what they state it would. However, with that being said, it's not difficult. And even though they say that it will become hard to turn, I didn't find that to be the case at all. In fact, I found the whole process to be easy. Now, at one point during the process, I noticed that the crank developed a little bit of a squeak. Now, it is metal on metal. There are no bushings, there are no bearings. So because of that, it was developing a squeak. But I found that a little bit of light machine oil, 3-in-1 style oil, was able to take care of that and keep everything functioning smoothly and quietly. Now, don't worry about the fact that this is something that makes food and I'm here putting oil on it. None of these parts have any contact or have any access to the food itself. So it's 100% fine to do that. So if yours develops a squeak, a little bit of light machine oil will very quickly take care of that. Now we can see here that I was just tipping that, and you can see that it's thick. It's no longer moving around. It's no longer swishing. There's no liquid there, but it's still not difficult to turn. And the coolest thing is that out of the blue, at some point in time, it gets a little stiffer, and then like somebody flicks a switch, all of a sudden the buttermilk releases from the butter fat, and you end up with a big blob of butter in the jar with all of the buttermilk separated from it. And it's amazing. I couldn't believe how quickly it happens just like that. And there it goes. That is crazy. And at that point, once this happens, you can stop. You're done. And you can see here, for me, it took just over 22 minutes to get to that. But that includes oiling. And of course, I had colder cream. So let's head on to the next step. I'll show you what to do next. Well, I've used a silicone spatula to scrape any of the butter off of the actual paddles that were inside the churner. And here I'm just holding a spatula over top of the jar and carefully pouring out the buttermilk. Now, guys, don't throw this out. It's not garbage. It's not waste. It can be used in cooking. We've all heard of buttermilk pancakes. Well, where do you think it comes from? Make yourself some buttermilk pancakes with the milk, and as you can see here, there is our butter inside the jar. But there's still a little more to do. Well, you now want to rinse off your butter. So we're going to place it into a bath of ice cold water. And as I said before, this yields about half a cup of butter. So I'm using some butter paddles here and just squeezing the butter to get some of that buttermilk out and get it out into the ice bath here, or the ice water bath. Now, don't worry about all the little scraps that are hanging around. We can mold those into the butter afterwards. So this is just kind of the preliminary rinsing sort of thing. Now, guys, if you don't have butter paddles, don't sweat it. You can always do this with your hands. It works just as well. It's just a little messier. So I find that the paddles work much better to be able to shape the butter and as well to get the buttermilk out because of the channels that are in the paddles to allow the buttermilk to drain out. If you don't squeeze out the buttermilk enough, you'll end up with a bitter tasting butter, and you don't want that. So at this point now, I'm just going to scoop all of this up. I'm going to kind of squish it into one ball, and we want to add our flavoring. And in this case, I'm going to add a little bit of salt. So I have my butter here on a cutting board, and it's time to work in the salt as well. We still need to squeeze out some of that buttermilk. So with the paddles, the best way that I found is to kind of work the butter, almost like clay. You want to flatten it out to make it a thinner area to work with. And I've also found, I did a little bit of research, looked into it a little bit, and in general, what is recommended is that for every half cup of butter, you add approximately a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. Now, I wasn't sure about the measurement, so I did it in 2 stages. I added an eighth of a teaspoon first to my mixture. You just sprinkle it over the top, and then you can fold it into your butter and work it through. And after I added that eighth of a teaspoon, I actually found that, yeah, it did require a little more. So I ended up adding another eighth of a teaspoon for the full quarter teaspoon, and it actually was perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. But you just gently work it in, molding your butter. You want to fold it over, mix it through, scrape it off, fold it over again. And you will find at some point in time that as you're working with this, the cold water has turned this stuff rather stiff. You can see it can be a little unruly to work with. But all of that liquid there on the cutting board, that is, for the most part, buttermilk. So for that, guys, I just got a little piece of paper towel, blot it on the cutting board to sop it up and get it out of there. And honestly, the butter that I made was not bitter. It worked out fantastic. So we just kept folding it in here, folding in our salt, flavoring to taste. And at the end, we just formed it into a block. Now I used the paddles again to gently form it into a 4-ounce block. And that, guys, was all it took to make the butter. Fresh, easy to do, homemade, you know what's in it. Guys, this was a lot of fun, easy to do, and I will be doing it again. And there you have it. Making homemade butter. Guys, I can tell you right off the bat that this is quite possibly one of the most delicious things that I've made here on the show. And we've done quite a few. We did the gnocchi, we did butter today. Previously, we've even done fruitcake, homemade fruitcake. So there's been a few things that we've brought to the show here, but this one here is absolutely delicious. I'm looking forward to mixing this with some of that homemade fruitcake, maybe warmed up in the microwave. That sounds fantastic. But guys, this was very easy to do. I'm actually surprised at how easy this was. Now, if I had let my cream sit out a little longer and get a little warmer, it would have gone a little faster. I think mine actually turned to butter at about 22 minutes. And the weird part about this is how quickly it turns to butter. You guys saw in the video, it's cream, it's thicker, it's thicker, it's thicker, it's thicker. And all of a sudden, boom, it separates and the yellow butter comes out and the buttermilk is there. It's amazing how fast it happens. So as soon as you're turning that crank and you feel that resistance, and as soon as it lets go and becomes really easy, you're done. That's all there is to it. But one of the most important steps of this, so that your butter is not bitter, because you don't want bitter butter, you want better butter, not bitter butter. Guys, a very important step. Get that buttermilk out of your butter. You don't necessarily need the paddles. I mean, I have them and use them in shaping and squishing. Those channels in the paddles really help to get that buttermilk out of there. But you can use your hands and just squish it and mold it, and then, you know, that sort of thing. Get the buttermilk out. Get as much of it out as you can, and you will not be disappointed. Now, the salt measurements that I gave you there at the quarter teaspoon for 4 ounces or half a cup of butter, that's pretty generic, and that's the way I like it. You may like it a little saltier. You may like it a little less salty. Take your pick. Do what you want. But fold the butter over and over and over again. Work that salt in through, or whatever flavorings that you're going to add. Which brings me to my next point. Guys, flavorings. Herbal butter, garlic butter. You can make a whole host. How about chopping up fresh jalapenos, very finely diced, and mixing it throughout that, and having like a jalapeno butter on a bagel. Oh, man, I'm getting hungry. Guys, You gotta try this. Whether you try it in a mason jar, flipping it back and forth, maybe a food processor with a paddle attachment inside, or whether you go with the Kilner Butter Churn, really, you can't go wrong by making your own butter. This stuff is awesome. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning into today's show. A little something different, but always fun, always fun. Guys, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click the bell and then you're not going to miss, well, you know what, future cooking episodes. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed today's content. I hope you're going to try to make your own butter at home, regardless of what method you choose. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.